From being born into one of the most unfavorable living conditions, being forced to leave school at only 10 years and work as an apprentice, having 2 failed businesses, to finally risking it all and starting a chocolate business, which eventually took off and became the biggest chocolate empire of all time and the largest chocolate factory in the world. Milton Hershey has done it all. This is the story of a man who fought many battles, failed woefully, but never gave up. Born into poverty, Milton Hershey's life began in the harshest of circumstances. Born into poverty on September 13, 1857, in Derry Township, Pennsylvania, his parents struggled to make ends meet due to his father's unsuccessful business ventures. When Milton was 2, his father Henry sold the family farm in pursuit of the booming oil industry in Pennsylvania, hoping for a quick fortune. Still, instead, the family hit rock bottom. At this same time, Fanny was pregnant with their second child, which meant there was going to be another mouth to feed, and things still weren't looking good for the Hersheys. Then Milton's uncles decided to come pay a visit to their pregnant sister and little nephew, except that what they met was far beyond their expectations of how bad things really were. Immediately, Fanny's brothers intervened, offering help to the family on the condition that Henry would abandon his futile pursuit of oil riches. It was a tough decision, but the family finally moved to Lancaster, where they were provided with a farm to cater for. For Milton and his mother, this was a fresh start, and they continually worked hard on the new farm, raising chickens and selling eggs. But for Henry, he wasn't about to settle for a farm with chickens and eggs when he knew there were bigger opportunities out there. So Henry left his family behind and continued his fruitless pursuits. But then came a bad winter, and the family struggled to stay warm. The cold was no joke, and Milton and his little sister Serena got really sick. Fanny tried all she could to keep both children warm, but she soon realized that Serena had developed a very bad fever that wouldn't go away. Apparently, it wasn't just any type of fever, it was scarlet fever, a common sickness that claimed the lives of many children at the time. Unfortunately, Serena was no exception. She died shortly after in 1867 at the age of 4 years. This tragedy became the final straw that broke off Fanny and Henry's relationship for good. And for Milton, it wasn't any better for the young lad. He was struggling to keep up in school, and losing his sister made everything 10 times worse. That's when 10-year-old Milton decided he had to change things for himself and his mom. So he said goodbye to school and set out on a journey that would turn into something amazing: the business of making money. In 1871, when Milton was just 14, he scored his first job working as an apprentice for a local printer, Sam Ernst. Now you'd think that landing your first gig would be exciting, right? Not for Milton. The work was a total snooze fest, and to top it off, Sam had a temper that could rival a thunderstorm. Adding to the misery, Milton's dad had committed him to a 5-year contract with the company. But after a few months, Milton was done. And what did he do? Well, he couldn't back out of the contract, but there was only one way out: get himself fired. So he threw his hat into one of the printers, causing it to malfunction, and that was it. He was fired. Surprisingly, his mom backed him up, realizing that the printing job wasn't a good fit for her son's future. So, with her sister Maddie's help, they pull some strings and land Milton a new job at the Lancaster confectionery owned by Joseph Royer. This is where Milton got his first taste of the candy business. Back then, candy recipes were more of an experimental art, with recipes handed down orally through generations. Joseph Royer wasn't about to let young Milton mess with the candy-making traditions. Instead, he put him on dish duty, taking orders and even sending him on ice cream deliveries. But Milton's mom, though, knew her son's potential, so she convinced Royer to teach him all the recipes he needed to know, and even offered to pay for this personally. After some back and forth, Royer finally caves. His father Henry, however, wasn't supportive and insisted that candy making was a woman's work. But it was too late for any of his advice. Milton had already fallen in love with the trade, and he spent the next 4 years under Mr. Royer's guidance, mastering the candy business. When he felt confident enough, Milton and his mother decided it was time for him to spread his candy-making wings. But there was only one problem: his savings couldn't even cover the cost of purchasing equipment. Fortunately, supportive aunts and uncles came to the rescue, loaning him $100 to kickstart his business. With their backing, 19-year-old Milton Hershey was all set up to open his very first candy shop. But little did he know, it wasn't going to be a walk in the park. His first business venture, In 1876, America was gearing up for its first ever World's Fair in Philadelphia, just 70 miles from where Milton Hershey lived. With 37 countries participating and millions expected to attend, Milton saw his chance and thought, why not open a candy shop here? And with that, he opened his first candy shop on Spring Garden Street in Philadelphia, offering everything from candies and ice creams to fruits and nuts. And despite stiff competition from other nearby candy stores, Milton's shop stood out. Now, here's what he did differently. To reel people in, he rigged up an air chute that pumped the tempting scent of his candies straight from the kitchen to the streets. Crafty move, right? This clever tactic lured people in, making his shop a favorite among customers. Soon enough, business was booming, and Milton eventually had to move to a larger space to accommodate his growing enterprise. But life can be a roller coaster, and after the World's Fair wrapped up, Milton's candy sales took a nosedive. To stay afloat, he had to sell his candies at wholesale prices to various other shops. Then, the sugar prices shot through the roof, and profit margins got so thin that Milton had to borrow money from his uncles. Despite working tirelessly for the next 5 years, he fell ill and ended up bedridden. The turning point came when he received a letter from his uncles stating that they could no longer loan him money. They advised him to close his store and salvage whatever he could. Finally, at the age of 24, Milton Hershey, faced with dwindling options, had to file for bankruptcy. This setback not only meant the loss of his business, but also shattered his family's faith in him. His second business venture. Still, Milton wasn't about to give up on his dreams, so he continued to strive. In 1881, when his father caught wind of the silver rush in Leadville, Colorado, he sent a letter to his son, urging him to join the adventure. Milton, thinking he had nothing to lose, agreed and headed to Colorado. However, upon arrival, they discovered that the silver they were hoping for had long gone. Not letting that get him down, Milton decides to do his own thing and lands another job at a candy store in Denver. Now, this candy store was all about caramels, but they had a special twist. Instead of the usual paraffin, they used fresh milk, vanilla, and sugar. The result? A caramel that's sweet, smooth, and has a longer shelf life. Intrigued by the process, Hershey stuck around and worked there for a year until he had mastered the art. When he felt ready to strike out on his own again, he decided to open a shop in the bustling city of New York. Hoping for financial support, he turned to his uncles, but they turned him down. His Aunt Mattie, however, took a chance on him and provided the loan he needed to set up his new shop. After familiarizing himself with the local supplies and the city's vibe, he opened his own shop in 1884, offering the unique Denver-style caramels. New Yorkers quickly became hooked, and his business started to thrive. Now, Milton's father saw his son's efforts and offered to help him make more profits. What did he suggest? Adding cough drops to the shop's inventory. However, it was a bad move because it put him in direct competition with the popular Smith Brothers cough drops that everyone in New York loved. Over the next couple of years, Milton's business struggled due to tough competition, and he accumulated so much debt that he eventually had to file for bankruptcy again in 1886. Stay tuned for part number 2.